The role of women in the Crusades, Heroines and Martyrs. Introduction. The Crusades, which spanned nearly 2 centuries from the late 11th to the late 13th centuries, are often viewed through the lens of male warriors and religious leaders. The primary focus has typically been on knights, kings, and popes, whose military and political actions define the campaigns. However, the role of women in the Crusades is an often overlooked aspect of this history. Women were not only participants in the Crusades in various capacities, but also played key roles as heroines, martyrs, political figures, and symbols of religious devotion. From the First Crusade to the Crusades in the Holy Land, women were involved in a variety of ways, actively influencing the course of events or symbolizing the piety and sacrifice that underpinned these religious wars. This essay explores the diverse roles women played in the Crusades, focusing on their contributions as heroines, martyrs, and their involvement in the Crusades' broader cultural and political context. 1. Women as participants in the Crusades. Women on the battlefield and in leadership roles. While the Crusades were predominantly a male-dominated affair, some women were directly involved in the military campaigns. Queen Blanche of Castile, 1188 to 1252, a key political figure during the Albigensian Crusade, 1209 to 1229, against the Cathar heretics, Queen Blanche was known for her strong leadership as regent for her son, Louis IX of France, when he was away on crusade. She managed the affairs of the kingdom and played a significant role in defending French territories and coordinating political actions during the Crusades. Countess of Tripoli, Margaret of Provence. Margaret, the wife of Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, played a significant diplomatic role in the Crusader states. As the wife of a king, she helped to govern and protect Crusader territory, demonstrating that noble women could wield influence in a male-dominated society, especially during times of crisis. Noble women and the defense of Crusader states. Women of noble and royal birth were integral to the defense and administration of Crusader states in the Holy Land. Isabella I of Jerusalem. Isabella I was crowned Queen of Jerusalem during the early 13th century and proved to be an astute and capable ruler. Her reign saw political maneuvering, including her marriage to Hugh of Lusignan, which helped maintain the Crusader presence in the Levant and stabilize the kingdom during a period of instability. 2. Women as martyrs and symbolic figures. Women as martyrs in the Crusades. While many women were not directly involved in the military aspects of the Crusades, they were often caught up in the violence and brutality that characterized these wars. Women became martyrs for their faith, and their stories were used to inspire further religious zeal and devotion. The Massacre of Jerusalem, 1099, during the First Crusade. When the Crusaders captured Jerusalem, many Muslim and Jewish civilians, including women, were killed. Some women, especially Christian women from Byzantine territories, were also victims of sexual violence and atrocities. In many instances, their suffering and deaths became part of the religious narrative used to inspire subsequent Crusader campaigns. Martyrdom as religious symbolism. The martyrdom of women, whether through death, suffering, or captivity, became part of the Crusades' religious symbolism. Women who suffered as a result of the conflict were often revered as martyrs who symbolized the purity and strength of Christian faith. Religious devotion and symbolism. Women also served as symbolic figures, representing the religious purity and sacrifice that were central to the crusading ideal. Saints and canonization. Several women were canonized by the Catholic Church in connection with their religious contributions, many of which were tied to the Crusades. For example, Saint Clare of Assisi, though not a crusader herself, symbolized the ideal of Christian devotion and piety that crusaders aspired to in their religious wars. Her example was often invoked by both men and women who participated in the Crusades as an emblem of faith and dedication. The role of the Virgin Mary. The Virgin Mary, revered as a spiritual mother and protector, became an important figure in crusading rhetoric. The image of the Virgin was often invoked as a symbol of the Holy Land itself, with women as protectors of that sanctity. 3. The role of women in the Crusader states. Women as administrators and landholders. In the Crusader states, women often took on roles as administrators, landholders, and political figures, especially when their male relatives were away on crusade. Eleanor of Aquitaine. Eleanor, one of the most powerful women in medieval Europe, participated in the Second Crusade, 1147 to 1150. Though she was not a military leader, her presence and influence were significant, particularly in the political and diplomatic spheres. After the Crusades, she continued to wield significant power as a regent for her son, Richard the Lionheart, during his absence. Women as patrons. Women in the Crusader states often took on the role of patrons of religious institutions, funding the construction of churches, convents, and hospitals. Their contributions helped to establish the religious infrastructure in the Crusader territories in the Levant. The role of women in the religious life of the Crusader states. Hospitals and charitable work. Women in the Crusader states were also involved in religious and charitable work. Hospitaller orders, such as the Order of St. John, often involved women in the administration of hospitals and care for the sick, mirroring their roles in medieval Europe as caretakers and religious figures. 4. Women and the spiritual motivation behind the Crusades. Religious motivation and participation. Women participated in the Crusades not only through action but also through spiritual devotion. Religious orders. Many women, especially those from noble families, took vows and joined religious orders. They played an important part in funding the Crusades and supporting the spiritual needs of the soldiers through prayer and acts of charity. Spiritual leaders. Women also served as spiritual leaders, guiding the soldiers and their families with religious counsel. Women like Saint Birgitta of Sweden, although not directly involved in the Crusades, played an influential role in inspiring religious devotion, even among the Crusaders. Symbol of the Holy Land. Virginity and sacrifice. In the crusading ethos, women were often symbolized as being closely associated with religious purity and the notion of sacrifice. Women were seen as protectors of Christian values, and their representation as both virgins and martyrs aligned with the broader ideals of sacrifice, purity, and religious devotion that shaped the Crusades. 5. Women and the legacy of the Crusades. The legacy of women's involvement in Crusades. The involvement of women in the Crusades, whether as participants, martyrs, or religious figures, has been remembered in various ways. Women as religious icons. The image of women as religious martyrs, saints, and protectors of sacred values has left an indelible mark on the religious rhetoric of the Crusades. Many of the stories of women's participation have been romanticized, symbolizing the triumph of Christian virtue over adversity. Inspiration for later generations. The legacy of female crusaders, particularly those who contributed to the Crusader states, has inspired later generations, influencing the roles that women have played in religious and military campaigns throughout history. Reflection on women's roles in war and religion. The role of women in the Crusades also raises important questions about their agency, visibility, and participation in religious and military conflict. Agency in a male-dominated society. Women's roles in the Crusades are often overlooked in the traditional narrative of medieval warfare, but their contributions, whether through leadership, diplomacy, or charitable work, were vital to the success of Crusader ventures and the upkeep of Crusader states. Challenges to the traditional narrative. Recent scholarship has focused on bringing attention to the often overlooked roles of women in the Crusades, challenging the traditional, male-dominated narrative of the Crusades and highlighting the diverse experiences and contributions of women. Conclusion. The Crusades were not only a monumental military and religious conflict. They were also an event that saw the significant involvement of women in various capacities. Women served as heroines, martyrs, political figures, spiritual leaders, and protectors of the religious ideals of the Crusades. While their roles have often been overshadowed by the actions of male crusaders, women's contributions were indispensable to the crusading movement. Whether as administrators in the Crusader states, martyrs who became symbols of faith, or supporters of the religious mission, women shaped the course of the Crusades in profound and lasting ways. Their participation reflects the complex intersection of gender, religion, and warfare in medieval society, and their legacy continues to offer insights into the broader cultural and political dynamics of the Crusades.